Okay, I want to spend some of the time right now to basically go in and show you how to use the z-index style rule. The z-index style rule allows you to have layers within a HTML page. So it's very similar to how Photoshop sets up its own layers, and you have a background layer, then layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So we can actually have things layered on top of each other to help us go in and create a very interesting design. So a couple things I have here. I want to look at the index page I have. And all I have, very simple, is I have a header section. I give it an ID called top, and then inside this is a paragraph that says instructor Mike is electrifying. Then I have a div tag. I could use a main section, a main element in that, but I just wanted to show you a couple different elements with this. And then inside that container, I have two images. One that's a lightning image and one that is a frame image on that part. And what I want to do is I want to make sure the lightning image goes behind the frame and the frame is on top. So let's take a look at, let me make sure everything's saved correctly. And let's take a look at what it looks like on the page. So all I have up here is I have the text, I have a graphic, I have another graphic. So if you don't work with layering, it's going to place the image on it's an inline element, so it places it right where you type in your code, and so that's why you see it on top of each other. If there's room, it would put the frame over here on the right hand side. So it will never go in and fit it on top of each other. So well, what do we do here? Well, with z-index, very simple. We have to know what we're working with here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go and add a style that applies it to the lightning class. Okay, so I have this information right there. I'm going to go into my style sheet. I'm going to type in dot lightning, and then I'm just going to go in and type in a z-index colon, and this is where you can use the values. This is where you have to watch out for the values. I'm going to do 0 here. Now what that indicates, 0 is going to be like that's going to be your bottom background layer. So it's going to be on the bottom, so anything you put on top, it's going to hide part of that image. The higher the number, than z-index, then it's going to be on top when we work with layers. So when I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let's just see what happens if we do anything right now. Nothing happens because we got to make some other adjustments. Okay, so again, still have some adjustments to make. Now what I want to do is I want to apply the image for the frame here. So I got a class called frame. So I'm going to do dot frame, and I'm going to put in z-index colon. This time I'm going to do a 1 because I want this frame to be on top. I'm going to save this. Let's refresh. And you can see I don't see anything else happening. Well, now you have to control the positioning. So now what we're going to do is we're going to position both the lightning image and the frame image so they're on top of each other. This is where we use the position style rules, and we can use position relative or position absolute. And also there's a position fixed that's out there as well. There's a couple inherent as well. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to move the lightning so it's up here at the very top. And so I'm going to go back in my code. I'm going to say position absolute. I can spell. Now it's important to put this in first. Then once you have the position absolute or position relative added in, then you can use the controls that controls the positioning, such as left, top, right, and bottom. You cannot use those unless you have that in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say top colon 0. And left colon 0 px. Now when I save this, let's go ahead and save this real quick. I'm going to refresh. Okay, Notice how the graphic is moved to the top. So it starts at the very top of our page. Now, let's do this here. I'm going to do top, and when you use absolute, you're basically telling it to be from the main window or the main container that you have here. I want to go from so many pixels from the top and so many pixels from the left. So this time what I want to do is I want to do 1000 pixels from the top. I refresh here. Where did it go? Went all the way down here at the bottom. So it moved it from the top of your screen 1000 pixels. Now this is a larger graphic, so what I like to do is I kind of like to experiment here so I can see what it looks like. And so what I'm doing is I'm just controlling the basic position of this. So I'm going to go ahead and take this back to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my frame. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say position absolute top colon 0 px left colon. Again, you can't use these controls unless you have the positioning set up. Okay. Notice how the picture frame is on top behind and the lightning is behind the image. So now we're seeing the layering once we've added the positioning added to those elements. Now granted, we might want to make it a little bit smaller so we can see a little bit more of the image of the lightning. We might want to move the frame over to the right a little bit more. So okay, that's fine. So we'll go back to our code, and from the left, let's move it over 100 pixels. And let's go ahead and make the frame a little bit smaller. So let's just so we can see it, I'm going to say width 75%. Oops, I forgot. I forgot I changed it around on the resizing the image. So that's a little too large, and that's because the way my original size is for the pixel dimension. So in this case, I'm going to reduce the size to 25%. 25%. Now see, I can still move this over a little bit so I can move it in the middle. And I would have to really know this, I would have to know the physical width of the graphic that I just placed in for the lightning for that. But again, when I adjust the left side, let's just go up to 300 here. And I save this. Again, notice how it's just moving over. You're just controlling the positioning. Now if I resize this window, of course I changed the width to be at 25%, and the graphic and the lightning stays the same size, which is kind of cool on that part. But again, notice how the layering affects. So that lightning is always going to be behind the graphic. So now let's take care of the text that we have here. So I'm going to go back to my code. Now let's just refresh it. We have ID top. So with our header, I'm going to say hashtag top z index, and what value are we going to place in? Give you a thought, give you a second or two to think, and we should probably, if we want it on top of the frame and top of the lightning, I'm going to go with 3. Now, if you always want it at the very top and no matter what, so if you start adding other layers you don't know and you always want that at the top, then a lot of times the designer is going to go in and just type in 100 or 1000, because then for sure it's going to be always at the top. So when I save this, again, I like to refresh to see what it looks like. And then now you see the text over top of the lightning, over top of the frame. Now you can work with positioning it and adjusting it to where you want, but the key here is to understand how layers are working in HTML. And you'll notice that we have 2 images and then we have text being controlled by the z-index. So anything on your page that's an object, which everything is an object on your page, HTML page, you can layer it. The key is to automatically go in and know what value you're going to be placing for the Z index. So in this case, like I said, if I want to make some adjustments to Mike is electrifying the text, I can go back in and I can change positioning here. And what I'll do is I'll say top left. I'll do the same as the frame there. Okay, so when I move this over, you'll see that it's moved over, right? So notice how it's going outside the frame. Well, okay, so let's just go back in and modify this a little bit more. Let's just add a width. We'll do 200px. And notice how it's wrapping around and almost inside the page. I need to go bring it over a little bit more because I have this little border around the frame there. So if I want to do that, I'll just bring this over from the left a little bit more. So let's do 350. Let's center that. So we'll do text hyphen align, center, save it. And a little bit off on the 350. I probably need to go from the left 330 on that part. But again, the key here is to understand how those layerings are being affected. Then again, you would have to work with positioning to position the objects the way you want. Now, if you're going to position something inside a div tag, inside a header, then you need to control, you're going to have to use the position relative. So when you're going in and you want to use absolute with the whole window, the desktop that you have there, then absolute's going to work fine. But if you're going to put it within a container, then you need to make some modifications.